We are awaiting a press conference from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and we'll bring that to you live as soon as it happens. But first, NBA analyst Bill Reiter joins me now by phone from Los Angeles. Bill, what more have we learned about the circumstances surrounding this crash?
Hi, Elaine. I think we'll get the official confirmation here in a few moments when the press conference you cited begins, but it has been confirmed, unfortunately, in multiple reports that among those who died in this plane crash include Kobe Bryant's 13-year-old and oldest daughter, one of her teammates parent, and presumably the pilot. 5 people in that crash as Kobe Bryant, his daughter, and one of her teammates were headed in his helicopter to one of her youth basketball games.
And Bill, what can you tell us as news now has spread about this tragic crash? What impact has his death been having among not just sports fans, but in the broader sports world, this news of Kobe Bryant's death? Yeah,
I mean, it has been a public mourning across really the globe in the sports world and for sports fans. Neymar, one of the great soccer players on earth, scored a goal and signaled to Kobe Bryant. In the only NBA game that's underway at the moment in Toronto, each of those teams intentionally at the start of the game took a 24-second shot clock violation, 24 and 24 for Kobe Bryant and his number. And so with the famous and with the athletic and athletes, there is mourning. And really, you know, my kids, Elaine, we live here in L.A., we're down at the beach, and there was just, as the news broke, there was an eerie silence, and teenagers and adults talking in shocked tones about how this can't be real. There is, here in Los Angeles, and I would imagine beyond it, just a quiet level of shock as the reality of this. We all start to do our best to process it and make sense of it.
Bill, why do you think Kobe Bryant was such a beloved figure in the Los Angeles area? Yes, but not just in LA, but, you know, I was looking on Twitter at LeBron James' comments from, I believe, just last night, talking about his reflections, seeing Kobe Bryant. This was before, of course, the helicopter crash, but the inspiration that he drew from watching Kobe Bryant on the basketball court.
Yeah, it's a great question because he resonated, you're right, Elaine, with so many people in so many ways. And I think it's that, and it's rare, right, this unique combination of both all-time greatness, and as a basketball player he was, but also being a very, very complicated human being. I mean, if you competed against Kobe Bryant, he wanted to destroy your self-confidence, your well-being, your hope, any belief you had that you could beat him on the floor, and yet there was a remarkable charm away from it. He was the most beloved figure, the most beloved sports figure by a wide margin in Los Angeles, and the connection he had was so powerful to be almost cult-like and emotional, but there obviously in Kobe Bryant's life were some dark moments, including accusations of sexual assault. He was a basketball player, yes, but he was also a Renaissance man in business. It turned out in art. He spoke multiple languages. He'd lived abroad in Italy with his family, and so he had a worldliness. This was a complicated guy, and if you tried to say that Kobe Bryant was just one thing, you were missing the 50 other things that defined him. And I think as a father and a parent, which makes this even more tragic than it otherwise would have been, Kobe Bryant, the dad, for a lot of folks, and maybe for Kobe, like it does for a lot of fathers with daughters, it took some of the rough spots off, right? I think it gave him some perspective, and whatever it did for him as an individual, you could see as a father the love he had for his children. The last time I ever saw Kobe Bryant in person, he was with his daughter, his oldest daughter, who passed away in that flight today. And so all of these things, this sort of crucible that of the ingredients that went into Kobe Bryant made him likable and loathed. And in the end, I think, Elaine, it added up to a real level of respect, and respect for his talent and for his mind and for his formidability and who he became as a father. And I think that's all of those things people are mourning today.
And Bill, what kind of a presence did he still sort of retain there in the Los Angeles area, given the fact that, I mean, he hadn't played since 2016?
Yeah, you would think he was the President of the United States when you saw him walk through Staples Center or be somewhere. And again, the last game I went to a few weeks ago when Kobe Bryant was there, I mean, obviously, Elaine, LeBron James was in the building. He plays, right? He plays for the Lakers. He's a big star. And if memory serves, maybe it was Rihanna. Some, like they always are at Lakers games, some superstar celebrity was there. and Anthony Davis is kind of a big deal. I mean, it's a who's who when you go to a Lakers. But it was when Kobe Bryant walked in, and not even when he walked in, there was a ripple. You could feel it in the building, and people started whispering, "Kobe's coming, Kobe's coming." And when he walked out of that tunnel near the floor, there was not a gasp, just an exclamation of, I mean, you would think that a group of people were watching someone literally walk on water to watch Kobe walk onto the floor. His impact, his connection, his hold over the city, it was absolute, and it was so real and authentic. It lasted well beyond, as you pointed out, when he could actually help the city. LA is usually a town when you can't offer something anymore, LA will sort of move on from you. That wasn't true for Kobe. There was an emotional connection beyond what he was able to do as a basketball player, and that's certainly part of what's being processed and dealt with today here in Southern California.
Bill, I wonder if you can talk at all about the fact that it was quite an active, quote-unquote, retirement for him as well, that, in fact, in those years after leaving basketball as a player, he was still very much keeping a busy schedule, including coaching his daughter's team.
Yeah, there are a lot of NBA players and former athletes who, as we know, Elaine, retire young and retire with money, and you have to fill your time. Many of them, some of them are friends of mine, they take up golf. That was never going to be Kobe Bryant. That competitive need, right, to win, to dominate, to feel alive in that way for him, it defined his post-playing career. He was a very successful entrepreneur, was moving into movies and production. You're right, as a coach of his daughter's team, and she was, an amazing talent in her own right, and the pride for her dad of what she was becoming. He continued to be aggressively involved in the things that mattered to him. His daughter's basketball team, being a father, some of these entrepreneurial ventures that he was a part of. I have some colleagues and some friends, since I'm in sports media, who tried to pitch some ideas to Kobe's production company, and I remember a couple sets of friends and colleagues marveling. A few of them made to the level where Kobe was in the meeting, just the aptitude and the shrewdness and the competitiveness with which he came to those meetings. He wanted to win. He wanted to be successful. And so you're right. I mean, Kobe wasn't a Laker as a player anymore, but everything we saw in his playing days, he poured into his family as a father, into youth basketball games, into his production company, into a number of myriad projects. He was, we all try to live life and seize the day while we can. He did it every single moment in whatever endeavor he was engaged in at that time. Absolutely.
All right, we want to let our viewers know we're continuing to keep our eye on that picture there on the right-hand part of your screen, Calabasas, California, where we expect local authorities to hold a news conference within the hour, is what we understand. So we're going to continue to monitor that and, of course, bring you that news conference just as soon as it happens. But, Bill, you mentioned earlier being there on the beach and sort of having this stunned silence descend around you, where people were just learning of the death of Kobe Bryant. What do you think the next few days in Los Angeles are going to be like?
Not to sound trite, but I think it's going to be the stages of grief. Elaine, because I'm a sports broadcaster and writer, my friends in L.A. are always texting me about sports. And this sort of rush of 50 or 70 text messages as the news came in, first was, we don't believe this, it can't be true. And then as more reports came in, it was, this can't be true. And now there's just, as you would imagine, the shock of it. I think there's going to be, I really believe there's going to be a public mourning here. There are going to be people crying in the streets. There's going to be anger. I mean, it's, loss of life, right? Death is part of the deal for human beings. But for it to happen to Kobe Bryant in this city at the age he was at age 41, which is my age, with his daughter on board, I think it's going to be one of the most difficult, emotional, collective moments that Los Angeles has ever had.
We want to let you know as well that President Obama has tweeted regarding this news as well, and we want to show our viewers that tweet. We showed you President Trump's tweet earlier in the afternoon, but there you see the tweet from President Obama. Kobe was a legend on the court and just getting started in what would have been just as meaningful a second act. To lose Gianna is even more heartbreaking to us as parents. Michelle and I send love and prayers to Vanessa and the entire Bryant family on an unthinkable day. Bill, you had touched on this a moment ago, the effect that having a family, and particularly being the father to daughters, that you saw perhaps, be a factor in the evolution of Kobe Bryant. I wonder if you can talk a little bit more about that, because earlier when we were listening to our CBSN Los Angeles station, they had Jerry West on, who talked about what he saw as sort of a very profound influence in Kobe Bryant's becoming a father to daughters.
I think that's absolutely right. And, as a father of a daughter who is 10, I can relate to, when you're a man and you try to be a good person, a good human being, a good husband, and you think you understand, you think you understand the opposite sex, you get a rude awakening when you have a little girl.
Yeah.
And, that's sort
he
of...
was surrounded by,
yeah. Yeah, you're surrounded by worries and by a love you never imagined, and frankly, by a perspective on what it is to be in the case of a father, my daughter, and Kobe Bryant's daughter, a young woman that you never understood. And so Kobe Bryant had sort of talked about this, right? Had talked about people coming up to him when Gianna, his daughter, was standing next to him and saying to Kobe, with her standing there, when are you going to get a son so that the legacy can continue, and her snapping back, I got that covered, right? And those, you could just see Kobe telling that story if you watch the clip on late night where he told it very, very, as he tended to effectively, not just like, be quiet, my man, but, my daughter gets it and I get her. There was, for any complicated human being, for any complicated man, when you have a daughter, and in Kobe Bryant's case, many, many daughters, and you have that level of love, it can only shape you, can only affect you. And I liked Kobe. He's a charming guy, but he had an edge to him. I mean, he had a competitive fire, and it was different, right? It was contained and channeled. There was just an overwhelming amount of love that came with that when you saw him with his daughter. And the last time that I did see him at this Lakers game, it was Gianna who he brought with him. And there was just an amazing moment where he got a standing ovation, and they shared it together. And you really... he became, and maybe he was always a complete man, Elaine, and we didn't see it, but in the public eye, there was a completeness to him. There was a three-dimensional reality that seeing him as a loving, doting father created, for those of us that had followed him as more the cutthroat competitor basketball player.
So, Bill, earlier in the afternoon, we were talking with CBS This Morning Saturday co-host Dana Jacobson, who had just sat down with Kobe Bryant to talk about sort of the chapter that he was in now, which was really focusing on being a storyteller, which may be something surprising for some folks who might not have realized the depth of feeling that Kobe Bryant had for that particular issue and trying to tell stories. Can you talk a little bit at all about that? That seemed to be an area of focus that was just as intense as perhaps what he had done on the basketball court itself.
And Elaine, you'll appreciate this as a person who's covered high-level politics. Kobe Bryant, when I covered him, when I was around him, no one, in sports certainly, with all respect from LeBron, was more of a master of the narrative of his own story. The ability to pull reporters aside and give access to really, he operated like some sort of White House spin guru on his own behalf, and you could tell that he enjoyed the competition of creating his own story and creating his own narrative and trying to define as best he could the way the public saw him, through just doing what you do when you're in the public spotlight, which is talk to the people that shape the news and trying to have reporters who would see his perspective and trying to co-opt them as best he could, which is no easy task in L.A. And so, when I heard that he had this interest in narrative and in storytelling, it made sense, because in looking back, I think he always understood his own career, right? When he stepped off the floor in that context, I think he understood the idea of, beginning, a middle, and end of heroes and villains. This is a guy who operated with so much depth and so much smarts in everything he did that doesn't surprise me. And I can remember, in dealing with him, and I'm sure you've been through this, Elaine, too, thinking, man, I got to be careful how charming this guy is and how aware he is of what he wants, because he feels like we're playing chess right now, even though it's just a polite conversation, because he understood, in a way that I respect, he understood the idea of building a story in the long term. Does not surprise me. Once that competition with reporters went away, he decided to do it himself professionally.
Right. So as you've been speaking, Bill, I'm told that we have another tweet that we want to show. As tributes have been pouring in, we've, of course, been monitoring social media. Oh, I'm told it's a SOT. Let's go ahead and listen to that reaction now from Kareem AbdulJabbar.
It's very difficult for me to put in words how I feel about the loss of Kobe Bryant. As a young boy, I met him when he was 11 or 12 years old. I was friends with his dad, Joe. We were former adversaries. Joe played for the 76ers, but he was a good friend and someone that I shared a friendship. And it's hard for me to understand now how this is affecting Joe and his wife. So to Kobe's family, I want to send my most sincere